This is Matt Kern with Super Inspector, and I'm here today with our other Super Inspector, the real Super Inspector, Blake Williams. Welcome.
Hey.
Good to see you. We're going to be talking about insulation today, so it's a real hot topic right now, or cold topic, depending, right?
Depending, that's right.
On there too, but we wanted to talk about, the things that the inspector actually looks at, so I figured the best way is to get it right from the horse's mouth. But what you guys really look at when we're inspecting a home for insulation, and even let's go through the phase inspection and what you've looked at before on the outside, sheathing and things like that, inside, and then after our home has been built and you come afterwards and look at the blown insulation, foam insulation, that type of stuff, okay?
Well, it's a pretty broad subject. I mean, there are just so many different kinds of insulation, different things you can do.
Right.
So when we're looking at a phase inspection on phase 2, before they've put the wall coverings on, this is when we can inspect the vertical wall insulation.
Right.
And so this can be batted insulation, which just means insulation that's put together in blankets and is rolled out.
That's right.
You can also blow in vertical wall insulation. They put up a real fine netting and they blow it in through the netting, and that holds it into the wall.
That's pretty cool.
That type of insulation, however, over time, it will compress down, and you'll lose the top part of that.
Right. Since bringing that up, I don't mean to interrupt you, but why do we see insulation move like that in the walls? It's because it's just never been attached to the studs properly. Because sometimes we can use the infrared camera and we're seeing see
it sliding down,
seeing a sliding down, and that's what it's doing.
Yeah,
right?
it's really sliding down. Well, and it compresses. The way insulation works is it has air pockets in it,
right?
And so that's what traps the heat and prevents the energy loss. Is those air pockets. So over time, it can compress either vertically or horizontally.
Right.
And when it does, so it shrinks, and that allows it to slide down. And so once it compresses, you lose your thermal resistance factor because there's no air pockets left in there to trap the heat.
Right.
And so you want to have, especially when you look up in the attic, you want to have nice, fluffy, blown loose fill insulation.
Right.
If it's all compressed down,
Yeah.
then it's not going to do a very good job.
And we see that a lot when we were up there, and we've known that a service person has come through there,
Right.
and they've trampled through there, and nothing's been fluffed
Right.
again, and it's all pushed out.
Right, so that should really be redistributed after somebody walks through the insulation, but
Right.
that rarely ever happens.
No.
And the other thing about that, once you push all that out of the way, and now you've exposed the top of the ceiling joist, that ceiling joist is a conduit for energy loss.
Right.
So those joists need to be covered with insulation, again, to trap that energy to prevent it from transpiring out.
Understood. Yeah. So everybody needs to go back through and fluff their insulation.
Right, and insulation is really, when you're talking about energy efficiency, it's the place to spend your money. It's the most bang for your buck. If you go up in your attic and blow in 6, 8, 10 more inches of blown in insulation, you're going to see an immediate improvement in your energy bills.
Yeah.
As opposed to things like spending tens of thousands of dollars on energy efficient windows. You may never recoup that cost. The benefit is very slight in the improvement of windows, where you can spend a few $100s on insulation and really notice the difference.
And so, like in the phase 2 inspections, were on the outside before they've bricked, the walls and stuff like that. Hopefully, before you've got to that, and you see where the seams and the joints are. Shouldn't all of those be taped?
Yeah, well, sometimes they overlap them, which is okay too, if they're
right.
overlapped by like 3 or 4 inches. But if there's a butt-in joint, then yes, that needs to be covered with flashing tape. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So on a pre-owned home, already built home, what type of insulation are you looking for? How thick are you looking for that? And are there different requirements for different cities?
Well, the requirements for cities are usually pretty standard.
Okay.
Most cities in the Metroplex are going to adopt the most recent IRC, International Residential Code.
Okay.
And so they don't go through the code book every time a new book comes out. It's this thick.
Yeah.
They don't go through there line by line and say, okay, we're going to adopt this, and not adopt this. What happens is the mayor or the city manager comes in, says, we have a new IRC. Do we want to adopt it? Show of hands, yes, and it's adopted. Mm-hmm. So there are some exceptions to that, but for the most part, they adopt the IRC as the new ones come out every 3 years. So the most recent is 2015. So when we hear builders talking about, oh, that's not code in this city or that's not code in this city, they're usually wrong. It's usually code in every city. It's just a matter of whether it's being enforced by that city or not.
True.
So as far as insulation goes, those are set by the energy standards set by the federal government now. And so right now with blown fiberglass insulation, we're looking for 14 to 16 inches. Now, if they have radiant barrier on the roof decking, then we'll see a couple of inches less of the blown insulation because the radiant barrier more than makes up for it. So you might have 12 to 14 inches with radiant barrier on the roof decking.
Got it.
And like my attic, I've got like 22 inches up there. Now, the previous homeowner installed that for me before we bought this house, but that was great.
Yeah.
And, our energy bills are really low for the size house that we have.
That's great. That's great. Well, we're going to obviously show some pictures of some attics and things that we've been in over the past months and the last year. And also, we're going to show in just a minute the infrared camera, the thermal camera that Blake uses and our inspectors use to look at different things. And one of the example pictures we're going to show you today is a bedroom that was missing 3/4 of insulation on top of the ceiling itself.
And that was a new construction.
Brand new
house
yeah.
With no insulation above the master bedroom and no access to that area from the attic.
Yeah,
either.
that's crazy, isn't it? So we'll be right back in just a minute. Thanks for watching.